Max, a golden retriever, and James, his owner, were inseparable. From morning runs till late-night movie marathons, they shared every moment of their lives. James had adopted Max as a pup, and their bond grew stronger with every passing year. Max's golden coat shimmered in the sunlight, and his eyes were filled with unwavering trust. To James, Max wasn't just a dog, he was family. Life felt complete with Max by his side. One rainy evening, tragedy struck. James was driving home from a weekend trip with Max when their car skidded on a slippery road and crashed into a tree. In the chaos, Max was thrown out of the car and disappeared into the surrounding woods. James, injured but desperate, searched for hours, calling out Max's name through the pouring rain. But Max was nowhere to be found. As James was taken to the hospital, he could only think of one thing: his loyal friend lost in the wilderness. Max wandered aimlessly after the accident, disoriented and frightened. The familiar scent of James faded as the forest stretched endlessly before him. Days turned into weeks as Max survived on instinct, drinking from streams and scavenging for food. Yet, he never forgot the sound of James's voice or the warmth of his embrace. He returned to the spot of the crash countless times, hoping to see James, but the area was desolate. Meanwhile, James refused to give up hope. Even as the months turned into years, he held on to the belief that Max was out there somewhere. Every bark he heard in the distance and every golden retriever he saw on the street filled him with a flicker of hope. James's heart ached with the absence of his loyal friend, and life never felt the same without Max by his side. After months of wandering, Max found himself on the outskirts of a small town. His golden coat was matted, his ribs showed through his fur, and his once bright eyes were filled with exhaustion. Max collapsed near a cafe, too weak to move. That's when Sarah, a kind-hearted woman who worked at the cafe, noticed him. She approached cautiously, offering a piece of bread. Despite his condition, Max's tail wagged faintly at her kindness. Sarah couldn't leave him there. She carried him to her car and took him to a veterinarian, who confirmed that Max was malnourished but otherwise healthy. Sarah decided to bring him home, naming him Buddy. Although Max was grateful, his heart still longed for James. Sarah's home became a sanctuary, and she showered him with love and care. But even as he adjusted to his new life, Max's eyes often wandered toward the door, as if waiting for someone he couldn't forget. In Sarah's warm home, Max began to thrive. His coat regained its golden shine, and his strength returned. He played in the yard and followed Sarah wherever she went, earning the affection of everyone in her neighborhood. Yet there were moments when Max would sit by the window, staring out as if searching for something or someone. Sarah often wondered about his past, sensing that he carried a deep longing. One evening, while tidying up the house, Sarah found an old blanket she'd bought from a thrift store. When she unfolded it, Max's reaction was immediate. His nose twitched, his tail wagged furiously, and he barked excitedly. Sarah was stunned. It was clear this blanket had a connection to Max's past. She couldn't shake the feeling that Max's story was far from over and that he was waiting for someone who loved him just as much as she did. Under Sarah's care, Max settled into a routine. Each morning, he would accompany her to the cafe, lying by the counter as customers came and went. His golden fur and gentle demeanor made him a favorite among regulars, earning him treats and pats. Sarah would smile as Max basked in the affection, but she couldn't help noticing the occasional moments when his eyes grew distant. Max seemed happy, but there was a quiet ache in his soul that even her love couldn't mend. At home, Max often stood by the fence, his nose pointed toward the horizon. It was as if he were searching for a scent carried by the wind. Sarah tried to distract him with toys and treats, but his heart seemed to be tied to a life he had left behind. As much as Max loved Sarah, his memories of James remained vivid. It was clear that while he was adapting, his soul yearned for something more. One day, while organizing a closet, Sarah pulled out an old box of blankets she had picked up from a flea market years ago. Among them was a worn, plaid blanket with a faint, musky smell. The moment Max caught the scent, his demeanor changed entirely. He bounded over to Sarah, sniffing the blanket with fervor. His tail wagged so hard it seemed like it might fall off, and he barked excitedly, his eyes bright with recognition. Sarah was taken aback. She had never seen Max so animated. It was clear that the blanket held some significance to him. As he nuzzled it, Sarah wondered if it could be a clue to his past. She decided to keep the blanket in his bed, where Max curled up with it every night. Seeing his reaction, Sarah began to piece together the possibility that Max might have had another family, one he had never forgotten. Meanwhile, James continued his search for Max, though the years had made it more difficult to hold on to hope. He had posted flyers, visited shelters, and scoured social media, but there was no sign of his loyal companion. Every time he passed a dog park or saw a golden retriever on the street, his heart would race, only to sink when it was a Max. His friends encouraged him to adopt another dog, but James couldn't bring himself to do it. Max wasn't replaceable. One evening, as James sifted through old photos, he came across one of Max as a puppy, sitting proudly with a plaid blanket draped over his back. James smiled through his tears, clutching the photo to his chest. The memory gave him renewed determination. He decided to make one final push in his search, creating an online post that told Max's story and asked for help. Little did he know this post would change everything. Years passed, and with no leads on Max, James had to make a difficult choice. A new job opportunity required him to move to a different town, miles away from their old home. The decision weighed heavily on him, as it meant leaving behind the place where he and Max had created so many memories. Before leaving, James visited their favorite park one last time, sitting on the bench where they had often watched the sunset together. Packing up his belongings, James found Max's old collar. It was worn but intact, a small reminder of the dog who had meant so much to him. He couldn't bring himself to leave it behind, so he hung it near the door in his new home. Though he tried to move on, James often found himself staring at the collar, silently wishing for a miracle that would bring Max back to him. James's heartfelt online post quickly gained traction. Animal lovers and dog rescue groups began sharing it widely, touched by the story of a man's unwavering love for his lost golden retriever. "Have you seen Max?" was the headline, accompanied by a photo of Max as a puppy wrapped in his plaid blanket. Comments poured in from people offering their support, sharing stories of their own lost pets, and promising to keep an eye out for Max. Among the many who saw the post was Sarah's neighbor, who immediately recognized the description. She had seen Max, now called Buddy, playing in Sarah's yard with the same distinctive golden coat and soulful eyes. The plaid blanket mentioned in the post further confirmed her suspicions. She decided to approach Sarah and share what she had seen online, knowing this could be the missing piece of the puzzle. When Sarah's neighbor showed her James's post, her heart sank. She read through the heartfelt words, noting the detailed description of Max and his love for the plaid blanket. The timeline and details matched perfectly with Buddy's story. Sarah realized that the dog she had come to love was likely Max, the loyal companion James had been searching for all these years. Sarah felt torn. Over time, Buddy had become a part of her family, and the thought of letting him go was heartbreaking. But as she looked at him curled up with the blanket, she knew that Max's heart still belonged to James. She decided to reach out to James through the contact information in the post, knowing that reuniting them was the right thing to do, no matter how much it hurt. Sarah nervously dialed the number in the post, her hands trembling as she held the phone. When James answered, she introduced herself and explained that she believed she had found Max. James's voice trembled with emotion as he asked for every detail, his hope rekindled after years of despair. Sarah described Max's reaction to the plaid blanket, and James immediately knew it had to be his long-lost friend. Overwhelmed with gratitude, James thanked Sarah repeatedly. They agreed to meet so that James could see Max and confirm if it was really him. As Sarah hung up the phone, she looked at Max, who was wagging his tail as if he sensed something important was happening. She hugged him tightly, whispering, "You're about to see someone who loves you just as much as I do." The emotional reunion. The day of the reunion arrived, and James drove hours to meet Sarah and Max. He brought along Max's old collar, hoping it would help rekindle memories. As he stepped out of the car, his heart pounded with anticipation. Sarah stood in her yard with Max by her side. The moment Max saw James, something in his demeanor shifted. He froze for a moment, then broke into a sprint, his tail wagging furiously as he ran toward James. James dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face, as Max leaped into his arms. "Max, it's really you," he said, hugging him tightly. Max barked joyfully, licking James's face as if to say he had missed him too. Sarah watched the reunion with tears in her eyes, knowing she had made the right decision. The bond between James and Max was undeniable, and it was clear that they were finally home. After the emotional reunion, James spent hours with Max, reliving memories from their time together. He brought along an old tennis ball, one of Max's favorite toys from years ago. As soon as James threw the ball, Max darted after it with the same excitement he had as a puppy. Watching him retrieve it and bring it back felt like no time had passed, even though they had been apart for years. James shared stories of their adventures with Sarah, recounting the times Max had been his steadfast companion through good and bad. Max seemed to recognize the familiar stories, responding with joyful barks and nuzzles. Sarah saw how Max's demeanor transformed in James's presence. It was as if a missing piece of him had been restored. She couldn't help but smile, realizing how much they belonged together. As much as Max loved being reunited with James, he didn't forget Sarah's kindness. During their visit, he often went back to her, nudging her hand for a pat or resting his head on her lap. Sarah laughed, saying, "Looks like I'll always have a little piece of his heart." James agreed, expressing his gratitude for the love and care Sarah had given Max when he needed it most. James invited Sarah to visit Max anytime, insisting that she would always be a part of their story. Max's joy was evident as he moved between James and Sarah, his tail wagging nonstop. For the first time in years, Max seemed completely at peace, surrounded by the people who had loved him unconditionally. James brought Max back to his home, where things had changed since they had last been together. The house was quieter, and some of their old haunts had been replaced by new memories. Despite this, Max quickly adapted, exploring the rooms as if reacquainting himself with his past. James placed Max's old collar on him, which fit snugly, symbolizing the bond they had never truly lost. In the evenings, James and Max fell back into their old routine of sitting by the fireplace. James shared stories about his life during their separation, while Max listened intently, his golden eyes reflecting the firelight. Their reunion wasn't just about picking up where they left off, it was about building a new chapter together, one filled with gratitude and hope for the future. Having Max back in his life brought a renewed sense of purpose to James. His days felt fuller, and his heart lighter. The bond they shared reminded him of the importance of persistence and the power of love. He began documenting their story, hoping it might inspire others who had lost hope in finding what they thought was gone forever. Max became a local celebrity, often recognized during their walks in the park. People stopped to greet him, having read James's heartfelt post and the story of their reunion. James realized that their journey was not just a testament to the bond between a man and his dog, but also a reminder of the kindness of strangers who had helped along the way. James decided to take Max to their old neighborhood park, where they had spent countless afternoons before their separation. As they strolled along the familiar trails, Max's ears perked up at the sounds of barking in the distance. Suddenly, a group of dogs came running toward them, their tails wagging wildly. Among them was Bella, a Labrador who used to be Max's closest canine friend. The reunion was heartwarming. Bella immediately recognized Max, and the two dogs began playing as if no time had passed. James chatted with Bella's owner, who was amazed to see Max back after so many years. They reminisced about the good old days and marveled at how resilient Max was. Watching Max frolic with his old friends, James couldn't help but feel grateful for this full-circle moment. James's story of reuniting with Max had gone viral online. The heartfelt post and subsequent updates drew attention from people worldwide. Messages of encouragement and love flooded James's inbox, with many thanking him for sharing such a touching story. Some even shared their own experiences of losing and finding their pets, creating a community of hope and support. A local news station reached out to James, asking to feature Max's story. Reluctantly, James agreed, thinking it might inspire others to never give up on their loved ones. During the interview, Max stole the show with his charming demeanor, wagging his tail and posing for the cameras. The segment ended with James saying, "Max is proof that love always finds its way home." The story resonated deeply, spreading joy and hope to countless viewers. James had been carrying emotional scars from the years without Max, but their reunion became a turning point. Max's presence brought back a sense of companionship and stability that James hadn't felt in years. Each day, Max's cheerful demeanor reminded James to focus on the present and cherish life's small joys. Together, they healed old wounds and built a brighter future. Their bond also inspired James to help others who had lost their pets. He began volunteering at a local animal shelter, sharing Max's story with others and encouraging them to stay hopeful. Max often accompanied him, becoming a source of comfort for the shelter animals and visitors alike. Through these acts of kindness, James found a sense of purpose, and Max became a symbol of hope and resilience. Realizing how impactful Max's story had become, James decided to create a small foundation in Max's honor. The organization focused on helping lost pets reunite with their owners and providing resources for shelters. Named Max's Journey Home, the foundation quickly gained support from animal lovers who had followed their story. James poured his heart into the project, knowing it was a way to give back and honor the bond he shared with Max. Max became the face of the foundation, appearing in campaigns and events. Children adored him, and families were moved by his story of loyalty and resilience. As the foundation grew, it not only helped countless pets find their way home but also strengthened James and Max's bond. Together, they turned their journey into a legacy that would inspire others for years to come. James decided to take Max back to the shelter where he had been found. It was a bittersweet moment for James, as he couldn't help but imagine what Max must have endured during their years apart. When they arrived, the staff greeted them warmly, thrilled to see Max thriving in his new life. Many of them had followed their story online and were deeply moved by the reunion. Max seemed to remember the place, sniffing around with a sense of familiarity. But instead of fear or sadness, his demeanor was calm and composed, as if he knew he had left that chapter behind. James thanked the shelter staff for their care and dedication, knowing their efforts had saved Max. He also made a generous donation to support their work, ensuring that other pets would have a chance at happy endings like Max. With Max back by his side, James decided it was time to embark on new adventures. They planned a road trip to visit places they had always dreamed of exploring together. Their first stop was a serene lakeside cabin, where they spent their days hiking, fishing, and simply enjoying each other's company. Max loved the freedom of the open wilderness, his golden fur shimmering in the sunlight as he dashed through the trees. At night, they sat by the campfire under a blanket of stars. James shared his thoughts with Max, as he had always done, finding comfort in his dog's silent, understanding presence. This trip wasn't just a vacation, it was a celebration of their bond and a chance to create new memories. Together, they rediscovered the joy of living in the moment, strengthening their connection even further. The local community, inspired by James and Max's story, organized an event to celebrate their reunion. It was a pet-friendly gathering where people could bring their furry friends and share their own stories of resilience and hope. Max was the guest of honor, and his playful nature charmed everyone. Children lined up to pet him, and other dog owners marveled at his journey. James gave a heartfelt speech, thanking everyone for their support and emphasizing the importance of kindness and perseverance. He also shared his plans for Max's foundation, inviting the community to get involved. The event was a huge success, not only raising funds for the foundation but also fostering a sense of unity and compassion among attendees. Max, as always, was at the center of it all, bringing joy to everyone he met. One day, James visited the place where Max had gone missing years ago. Standing in the spot where they had been separated, James felt a surge of emotions, sadness, guilt, and relief all at once. Max seemed to sense the significance of the moment, staying close to James and offering silent comfort. Together, they stood in quiet reflection, acknowledging the pain of the past but also the strength it had given them. James realized that this was a moment of closure, a chance to let go of the lingering guilt he had carried. He knelt down, hugged Max tightly, and whispered, "We've come so far, buddy." Max wagged his tail as if to say, "We made it." Leaving that place, James felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years, ready to embrace the future with Max by his side. As time passed, Max began to show signs of aging. James noticed that his once boundless energy had slowed down, and he started to experience occasional stiffness in his joints. Worried, James took Max to the vet for a checkup. The veterinarian confirmed that Max was showing signs of arthritis, which was common for older dogs, especially golden retrievers. While the news was concerning, it wasn't unexpected. James was determined to ensure Max's comfort and quality of life in his golden years. He started giving Max joint supplements and adjusted their daily walks to suit his needs. They continued to enjoy their adventures, but at a slower, more relaxed pace. Despite the challenges, Max's spirit remained as bright as ever, and his loyalty and love for James never wavered. It was clear that the bond they shared had only deepened over time. One day, while volunteering at the shelter, James met a small, scrappy puppy named Daisy. She was sweet and energetic, but she had been abandoned by her previous owners and was looking for a new home. James thought about it for a moment and realized that Max, while enjoying his time as the only dog, could use a companion. He brought Daisy home, unsure of how Max would react to the newcomer. When Daisy first arrived, Max greeted her cautiously, sniffing her from head to tail. Over time, they became fast friends. Max took on a big brother role, teaching Daisy how to navigate the world with a calm and steady presence. Daisy, full of youthful exuberance, injected a new sense of vitality into Max's life, encouraging him to play and explore in ways he hadn't in years. Together, they created a new dynamic in the household, and James was grateful for the new addition to their family. Max's story continued to inspire many, and James decided to write a book about their journey. It was titled Max's Journey, a tale of loyalty and love, and it detailed every twist and turn of their reunion and the years that followed. The book became a bestseller, reaching readers across the world. People shared their own experiences of lost pets, and many reached out to thank James for reminding them of the importance of never giving up. Through the book, James not only shared his story, but also raised awareness for pet adoption and rescue efforts. A portion of the proceeds from the sales went to support Max's foundation, which continued to grow. Max, now an old dog, would often curl up next to James as he wrote, a silent reminder of how much their bond had shaped their lives. Max had given James a purpose, and through their story, he was giving back to the world. One morning, Max seemed more tired than usual, and James knew something was wrong. The vet confirmed that Max had developed a serious heart condition, and his time was limited. James was devastated, but he vowed to make Max's final days as comfortable as possible. They spent the next few weeks enjoying quiet moments together, reflecting on their journey. Max's tail would still wag when James spoke to him, and his eyes remained full of love. On Max's last day, James held him in his arms, thanking him for everything he had brought into his life. Max passed peacefully, surrounded by love, knowing he had completed his mission. His legacy lived on through the stories, the foundation, and the lessons he had taught James about loyalty, perseverance, and the power of love. James planted a tree in their backyard in Max's memory, a living tribute to the dog who had changed his life forever. James decided to honor Max's life with a memorial service that would celebrate his love and the impact he had on everyone who knew him. The service was held at the same park where they had spent so many joyful afternoons. People from the community gathered to share stories of their own pets and the joy Max had brought to their lives. Even the shelter staff attended, paying tribute to the dog who had once been homeless but had touched so many hearts. James spoke during the service, recounting their journey and the deep bond they had shared. He expressed his gratitude for Max's unwavering love and loyalty, which had helped him through some of the toughest times in his life. As the sun set and the crowd dispersed, James felt a sense of peace. Max's spirit would always be with him, and he was confident that the dog's legacy would continue to inspire love and hope for years to come. After Max's passing, James struggled to adjust to life without him. The house felt emptier, and the quiet moments they had shared were now filled with sorrow. But over time, James found comfort in knowing that Max's journey had been one of love, adventure, and resilience. He decided to honor Max by continuing their work at the foundation, helping other lost pets find their way home. While Max could never be replaced, James knew that the love they had shared would always be a part of him. And as he looked at Daisy, who had become a wonderful companion, he realized that Max's spirit lived on in the new adventures they would have together. Max's legacy was not just in the work they had done, but in the hearts of everyone who had been touched by his remarkable story.